Hi, welcome to Lore of the Ring, where I explain terrible wrestling concepts to my co-host. I'm Dan,
I'm Daphne.
and I thought first we could just say how much we both know about wrestling. I think it would be best for Daphne to start first, because mine is a little bit more long-winded.
Yeah, I get shortest resume goes first, so I'll start. Um, Other than wrestling parodies like Kaiju Big Battle, which is the wrestlers all dress up as monsters and superheroes and stuff. Um, I don't know much at all about wrestling. I know some of the memes. I know the copy pasta with I think Scott Steiner. I know a lot of the classic video clips that turn into memes. I know like 3 or 4 female wrestler names because I think that they're really pretty. Other than that, I think my wrestling experience begins and ends with when I was 11 years old and my cousins were playing all of the old Nintendo 64 wrestling games. So barely any experience at all with wrestling, unfortunately. Fortunately, for your purposes.
Yeah, I started watching wrestling in 2005 when I was in elementary school.
Oh God, I'm old.
And I had watched a bit of it with my dad in like 2003, 2004, but I was under the assumption it was just like normal sports, so I was never interested in normal sports. But when friends started talking to me about John Cena spray painting people, I was like, I could watch that. So it was right before WrestleMania 21 when I started watching, and I've been kind of in and out of it, and I usually pay attention when weird storylines are happening. So I've also like played all video games. I bought the old ones and to get all the storyline stuff, and I would buy old DVDs with money I could get together. So I have even stuff I didn't watch. I had a knowledge of everything that came before. So the podcast in general is going to be talking about some of the weirder storylines, but I just want to say I love wrestling. I love it as a framing device. I love everything about it. Even though there's lots of times it's bad. And I kind of wanted to spend this first episode talking about what it has in common with like other writing stuff, like TV shows and books and stuff like that. So the first thing that I had like noticed when I started watching anime, and I have the least out of the two of us, I know less about anime than the two, is that the concept of a tournament arc is very much like wrestling in that they can introduce like these weird characters and then like not explain their origin because they're just here and they want to fight. Daphne, I know you could explain a little bit more about the tournament arc.
Sure, yeah. It's actually funny that you mention introducing a bunch of new characters. That's one of the things I put in my notes, which I'll get to in a second. The basic premise is that in an anime, on occasion, you may need filler before you get on to the next part of your story. If it's an adaptation of an existing ongoing manga, then there are going to be times when the anime runs out of story. They've caught up to the manga and they can't do anything else, and they may still need to finish out a season or continue airing the show. And so they may introduce a non-canon story arc where the characters are entered into a fighting tournament, and that can advance the plot. It can be used to introduce a bunch of new characters or establish a new villain. Sometimes you get that instead of the actual ending to a show like you're supposed to get because the manga didn't finish and they had to end the TV series. And they are sometimes actually baked into the show. Dragon Ball and Yu Yu Hakusho are the best examples I have of when the tournament arcs were relevant to the plot and relevant to character development. They're also, I have notes on the ways that they kind of subvert some of the, I don't like to use the word tropes because it just feels so overused, some of the more standard storytelling elements that you see in tournament arcs. I went and I took some notes on what only works in tournament arcs, what I assume works in wrestling and in tournament arcs, and a couple things I think are notable about anime tournament arcs. But they don't always have to be filler. I'm not caught up on anime as much as I would like to be this past year or so. But for people who are familiar with My Hero Academia, a huge portion of the second season was essentially a tournament arc that was notable for the main character did not normally the main character will lose in the final match of a tournament arc because they want to give them motivation to keep learning. And I want to say he lost in the semifinals. He didn't even make it to the final round. So then the story became the other characters that surpassed him and how he felt about them moving on past him and that motivating him to keep working and stuff. So I'm interested in hearing the connections you have between tournament arcs and wrestling, because I feel like I see some of these lines connecting, and I'm not sure I see all the same ones that you do.
Yeah, what are some of the ones that you're seeing, just before I start, like, going into the ones I think of?
It's interesting that you mentioned using them to introduce a bunch of characters really quickly, because I guess this demonstrates how little I know about wrestling. I assumed that you would not do that in wrestling. I just assumed that with the nature of introducing new, I guess, pro athletes, I don't know if you consider them to be, they're like a mixture of actor and athlete as far as I can tell. I assume you want more investment in them than just, by the way, it's tournament time and here's this guy. But it sounds like that might not be the case.
There are some times where we introduce a whole team of people at once. Mm-hmm. The most notable one, and we'll talk about this more in depth, it was called the Invasion Arc, which happened when Vince McMahon, the billionaire who owns WWE, bought his competition, and then he had to introduce all of their like stars that he kept under contract to the promotion at once.
That's incredible.
And then there's like other times like the opposite of that happened, where a bunch of people left WWE at once and went to the competition, and they all had to be introduced at once. We'll talk about that a time as well.
Oh, it sounds like good times. Okay. So yeah, it sounds like the character thing, actually, I don't know why I hadn't expected that. I don't know if this works in wrestling. Tournament arcs are often used as a way to kind of save on the budget, because you can use a lot of camera animation tricks to kind of hint at a fight happening and reuse a lot of animation and stuff. But my assumption was that the budget for wrestling is all in the ring and the promos and the introduction stuff, so you probably still spend the same amount, I'm guessing.
That depends, like, on the match, but there's, like, normal, like, they do tournaments, too, like King of the Ring, where it's, like, normal just fighting, and they can also, like, they can do what's called a dusty finish, which is where there isn't a clear winner, or both people get disqualified, where they can just, like, not do the match and possibly pay the people less. So it's a way to actually there's ways to save money in that similar way, too.
Okay.
But yeah, like, there's other more expensive matches. We'll do a whole episode about the bad matches that are like, why would you do this? You may have seen me and some people in the Discord talking about the exploding barbed wire death match that happened a while ago.
I vaguely remember that, and aside from that being my new favorite sentence, it just sounded like a really intriguing concept.
Yeah. There's a lot with wrestling.
I've one of the brief times that I kind of get a glimpse of what's happened in wrestling in the past is I want to say he changed his name. There was a pop culture website that used to be called X Entertainment, and he changed it because it sounded like an adult website. And he changed it to Dinosaur Dracula, which is much better. And more than once, he's done countdowns of weird things in wrestling, like the time someone fought a mummy, or the time someone fought a giant turkey, or a leprechaun. So, like, I have a surface level awareness of, oh, this thing happened that one time, but I don't have context for necessarily how notable that is, as opposed to like the status quo of wrestling and stuff. I assume that's weird, and I assume it doesn't happen that often, but it sounds like a lot of crazy stuff happens all of the time forever.
Pretty much. The Leprechaun was a character for like 5 years, and he was a major character.
Of course he was. God.
Because there are 3 things Vince McMahon finds extremely funny. First 2 are are fine in that it's someone getting pushed into a pool with their clothes on, and the second is poop. Regretfully, the third one is people who have dwarfism, and he does shit with that constantly.
He was almost 3 for 3, and then he fucked it up. Oh, are we cussing on this podcast? I'm so sorry.
That's fine. We can cuss.
Okay. Okay. I should have asked you first.
Yeah, there's a wrestler named Stone Cold who all he does is give the finger. That's his whole gimmick.
Hold up. Is that Stone Cold Steve Austin or is it a different Stone Cold?
It's same one.
Okay. I was like, is there another one? Because I genuinely do not know.
So, I took a lot of notes about things that I think like get laid out by wrestling fans, like as these are the mechanics of how wrestling storytelling works, and I think it's undervalued in that how much it like exists in other media, and also just the way that like the wrestling fans lay it out. I think wrestling could be like a really good like storytelling tool. Like I was listening to another podcast because there's no shortage of wrestling podcasts, and they had Freddie Prinze Jr. on, who, you know, played Fred in the Scooby-Doo movie, is married to Sarah Michelle Gellar, and he wrote for WWE for an extended period at one point. And he was talking about like all the stuff in common, and that like he's like, as an actor, he's like, oh, we call it monologuing, but they call it a promo. Like, it's just the terms are different in how it works. The biggest thing in wrestling that I'm probably going to just say off the cuff a lot is the concept of getting someone over, which is to basically legitimize them to an audience, whether as a hero or a villain, just getting them like the audience likes them. And I don't think a lot of writers, especially for like big franchises, understand that, and they just think they can introduce a character and like, oh, they'll be liked. The only time I can think of like a writer doing that recently was in Infinity War, and I have problems with that movie, but
big same.
This is something they do well, because up until that point we only saw Thanos sit in a chair. So to get him over, they have him beat the Hulk in like 1 minute. So which is something also in wrestling called a squash match. That's the same concept.
That's I've seen this referred to as the Worf effect of Worf from Star Trek, where a really competent character is taken out. No, I'm thinking of something else. I'm getting it mixed up with just because my thing is I don't think that the Hulk should have lost that fight, quite frankly. And it always makes me think of the trope of like the super competent character that is always shown losing to establish that whoever just beat them up is a much bigger threat. And so that's what I thought of with Thanos.
Yeah, that's actually a thing in wrestling too.
I knew it.
That role is called a jobber, as in they're doing the job.
God, I knew there was a word for that. Thank you. Oh, I accidentally tied it back in, even though I totally got us off track. That was.
No, I mean that works. And also, a big thing in writing is like show don't tell, and wrestlers have invented a whole terminology based off of that. Because, like, you know, in a show, it's like anywhere from like it can be an hour to 2 hours, but then there's like 10 matches you have to do, and so you can't do like the full monologue for everybody. So they have this term called in-ring psychology, which is being able to depict how your character is feeling through your actions. Because everything is told exclusively through that. So like, for instance, like, the matches, like whoever wins gets a title match and one person is really desperate, they're going to be trying to go for a pin or just any way to win as quickly as possible. And I think like you could tie that back into like fight choreography in movies and how sometimes it's really good. Like, I have opinions on Star Wars. Like, I think it's a good series. I don't like it that much. I know it's very good. But like, so Phantom Menace, the fight scene is very cool with Darth Maul, but you can't like feel what the characters are feeling, versus like Return of the Jedi, where there's no fight choreography and Luke is just wailing on Vader with the lightsaber, and it's more emotionally effective.
They don't showcase it as much as I would like in The Force Awakens, but I think there's a good one there as well. Because you see, a character who's literally never touched a lightsaber trying to defend himself against someone who, has years of experience with that. And so there's a lot of really frantic movements and a lot of backstepping and a lot of trying to avoid and really slow reaction times and stuff, which I think does a good job to telegraph like the huge difference in skill that these two characters have. And then, a third character joins a fight and also uses a lightsaber and is much the same, where she's just trying to end the fight as quickly as possible to get away from the antagonist.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, a good fight scene in a film or in a story, they do really try to showcase that. I think some of them are better at it than others, but it's really important you can't, unless you're an anime, you can't monologue as you're fighting, usually. So you have to kind of show that off with the physical movements and the body language and stuff.
Yeah. And also, just because I do really love that fight scene in Force Awakens also.
Oh my God,
my favorite thing that I noticed was that Finn was holding the lightsaber like a baseball bat.
Yes!
That's like my favorite thing about it.
It is wonderful. It's such a good touch.
So we did just talk about like things that are in common, but I want to talk about one thing that's really unique to wrestling.
Okay.
Because like meta storytelling is in everything, but wrestling has a very unique way of going about it. So what they call canon in wrestling communities is referred to as Kayfabe. It just basically describes the thing that we do when we watch any media where we know it's fake, but we act like it's real, the performers act like it's real, and that's how we engage with it.
That's what that means. Okay.
And then the opposite end of the spectrum is called a shoot, which is when the wrestlers decide, no, I don't care anymore, and they start fighting for real, which sounds fun to watch. It's not.
It sounds like it'd be a little scary for the other person.
Yeah, usually one person decides before the other one.
God.
But then there's this half step between it called a worked shoot, where you kind of blur the line to like what's real and what's part of the story in this case. So the only thing I could think of, it's like if you were reading a book and it's like this narrative, and then halfway through the book the writer speaks to you directly and is like, I'm trapped somewhere.
I'm trying to think of I off the top of my head, nothing comparable to that in fiction is coming to mind.
Yeah, like that's what I like that's like so unique about this, and that's really why I wanted to use this to kind of introduce the idea of it.
Yeah.
So first I'm going to talk about just a worked shoot promo that like is like one of the most famous ones, and then I'm going to talk about the best example of a storyline.
Okay.
So the promo that I'm thinking of is referred to as the pipe bomb promo. And I'm going to send you a picture. I'll probably throw it up on the screen when on the YouTube upload of this. So the wrestler CM Punk had been with WWE for like a while. But he was getting very fed up with the way he was being like treated in the company. But like they knew he was popular and they wanted to keep him around. So what they told him was that he got to do a promo where they didn't write it for him. They were just like, you're going to go out, knock John Cena down, and then you can just go off about the company. So the whole thing is addressed to John Cena and the fans the whole time. And I picked a few choice quotes from it that really like show just like how much people were like is this, how much of this is real? So he opens the promo basically by saying this sentence: I hate this idea that you're the best, because you're not. I'm the best. I'm the best in the world. There's only one thing you're better than I am at, and that's kissing Vince McMahon's ass. You're as good at kissing Vince's ass as Hulk Hogan was. I don't know if you're as good as Dwayne, though. He's a pretty good ass kisser. Always was and still is. Dwayne referring to The Rock.
To The Rock, yeah, okay. Jeez.
And that was mainly spurred because one of the reasons he was upset about that is that he knew he was going to be going into WrestleMania as, like, the champion, but he wasn't going to, like, main event it. They were doing John Cena versus The Rock in the main event.
Okay.
So, and then he goes on to say that no matter how many times he proves the best, he says, quote, I'm not on your lovely little collector's cups. I'm not on the cover of the program. I'm barely promoted. I don't get to be in movies. I'm certainly not on any crappy show on the USA Network. I'm not on the poster of WrestleMania. I'm not on the signature that's produced at the start of the show. I'm not on Conan O'Brien. I'm not on Jimmy Fallon. But the fact of the matter is I should be. And trust me, this isn't sour grapes. But the fact that Dwayne is in the main event of WrestleMania next year and I'm not makes me sick.
Jeez.
So we're closing in through, like, and he even directly insults the fans at one point, because he's like, this is your fault too, because you buy it.
Oh, God. So this
and,
this is already in, like, is this real, or is this part of the bit territory for me? Like, 2 sentences in.
And this next part is a part that, like, I bring up a lot, because it's very accurate in, like, how I view, like, the people in charge at WWE. He goes on to rant about, like, Vince McMahon. He goes, Vince McMahon's gonna make money despite himself. He's a millionaire who should be a billionaire. You know why he's not a billionaire? Because he surrounds himself with glad-handed, nonsensical, douchebag fucking yes men like John Laurinaitis, who's going to tell him everything he wants to hear. And I like to think that maybe this company will be better after Vince McMahon is dead. But the fact is, it's going to be taken over by his idiotic daughter and his doofus son-in-law and the rest of his stupid family.
Jeez.
to put in who he called idiotic, I'm going to show you a picture of what his son-in-law looks like.
Oh no.
Because it's like, probably wouldn't say anything about him unless I was very frustrated. From those wrestling games, you might remember him as Triple H.
Wait, his son is Triple H?
His son-in-law is Triple H, yeah.
Holy crap. Okay, yeah, no, that's not someone that I would talk a lot of shit about unless I guess I was really mad. That's like, jeez. Well, today I learned that. Jeez Louise.
And then they cut off his microphone when he starts to say this. Let me tell you a personal story about Vince McMahon, alright? We do this whole anti-bullying campaign, but... And then they cut off his microphone.
Wow. Okay, yeah.
So Punk only stayed with the company 3 more years after that, and left. He said Vince was, like, on the verge of tears when he left, and people still chant his name at shows when they don't like what they're seeing.
Holy shit. How did he last 3 more years? How did he get away with that?
I don't know, but, like, it was probably their most profitable thing, because everyone was like, is he really gonna quit? Like, after he wins?
That makes sense.
So, the next one is a storyline that, when I watched it, it really was like the how much of this is real question.
Okay.
So I'm going to send you a picture of the 3 people involved in this storyline, and then I'm going to explain each of them. So on the right of that image is Matt Hardy. He's one of the 2 Hardy boys. Yeah, that's their real name, but
of course
they just share it with the book. That's their real name.
Okay.
He's going to come up on this a lot, this podcast in general, just because of, like, character, because he tries everything. My favorite recent thing he did is when he fought a kangaroo, who he kept calling Joe Frazier, with his brother.
Jeez.
In the center, that's Edge, and he's still around. Lots of people like him. He's very talented. Back in the day, he used to fight with the Hardy Boys a lot. And then on the left is Lita. And it's kind of centered around her, this story. So Lita was Matt's girlfriend in real life. They did a storyline that it's going to be talked about more later because I need to package it with 4 other storylines because it's just a common theme that I don't like that WWE did. But basically, it was between Matt and this other guy was like 9 feet tall. That's me being hyperbolic. He's really like over like 6'11" or something.
Okay.
So they use him to write Matt off TV because Matt had an actual knee injury. So they had Matt get choke slammed off the stage. So Matt sat at home for the next couple months. But what happened while he was sitting home, and this is like legit, this isn't like part of the story yet, this is just the background. Lita started having an affair with Edge, who was, Matt considered him one of his closest friends.
Mm-hmm.
Matt found out about this, and got upset, and apparently threw like a big like tantrum or whatever. I don't know if I'd call it a tantrum. I would be upset too, at the WWE offices, and that got him fired.
Okay.
So Matt didn't shut up about it. Like, so everyone knew, like, and like over like the next like couple months, he came back like the same year. People would chant like "You screwed Matt" and "We want Matt" at Edge and Lita whenever they'd come out. Oh, jeez. So that's just like the background. Like, there was a petition that apparently was started that says, I had like, I think over 10,000 signatures to have them sign him back.
Oh God.
So anyway, there's the storyline with the 7-foot tall guy is still going. I'm not saying his name because he has a backstory that's worthy of an episode.
Okay.
And Matt runs out, but without, his music doesn't play. He just shows up and starts like beating the hell out of Edge, and you can hear him calling Edge by his real name, which is Adam.
Oh jeez.
So everyone is like under the assumption at this point, like, did they just like let him in because they're like, oh, it's Matt, and then he like actually
so this was this part of the story, or was this a real?
So I would say his frustration was probably real, but they let him back in the building. So like this goes on for like a couple weeks, where like at one point Matt gets handcuffed by police and even walked out.
Oh jeez.
So people were like, is this real? But anyway, that's just like a piece of storytelling that I don't think can be found anywhere else, is that they like wrote in this real dispute that everyone knew about and acted like it was real, and they like would talk about it, and like he would like come out and say everyone by their real name. He would call Lita Amy Dumas, he would call Edge Adam, and they would do like these these interviews you would see like on like news where like two people would be arguing, where it would be like web interviews where they'd be like talking and having a debate with like someone like officiated, and it's like, how much of this is fucking real?
So within the fiction of this storyline, one of the plot elements was this guy is so mad he's ignoring the fiction of our storyline, basically. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So was the affair real then, or was that just made up? Or
the affair was real.
And they were like, oh, this would make for good wrestling plot. I mean, it would, and it sounds like it did, but also, geez. That's... I don't know what I expected, but it super was not that.
Yep. So they have like a bunch of different matches after this, one of which Matt gets dropped headfirst on the turnbuckle, and it like breaks his face open.
Jeez.
And they had to like stop the match. Like, it seems like that was like written in the storyline, but the way it just kind of like stopped after that, it's like this isn't like storytelling and like how it should be told. It's like, no, this is just whoopsie.
Oh my god. Huh.
So the other parts of that story where it's like the resolution is like they have a cage match, which is the only ways to win is to escape the cage or in some cases pin the person. Where Matt climbed the top of the cage and jumped off of it onto Edge. And that's how that match ended. Edge technically won this feud. Like everyone's like, Hardy says that, oh, the steel cage match was supposed to be an end, but they were like, we can't keep these two on the same show because they had a thing called the brand separation where, because you could just, when everyone is on like the same shows, you could like skip the second show of the week. So the way they got people to watch the other one is that they would be like, well, different people are on this one.
Oh,
so
okay.
They were like, we can't keep Edge and Matt on the same show because it would only make sense if it's on site at every moment. So they had Matt lose the match that was a loser leaves Raw, which is the name of the show they were on, match. So they had him lose it. So technically he lost the feud.
Jeez. Wow, that sucks for him. So when just make sure I'm tracking this correctly. When you're talking about there being like two different shows, is that like a different two different episodes airing a week or were recorded in a week or?
Yeah, so right now WWE does 3 shows, Raw, SmackDown, which are their 2 normal shows, and then NXT, which is supposed to be their developmental group. Raw and SmackDown right now, when the storyline was being done, were the only 2. Unless ECW came back around this time. I'll talk about that another time. Okay.
All right, so this was 2... Technically, they were part of the same franchise, but they were like 2 separate storylines, different casts. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. That's what I thought. I just wasn't 100%.
So there is one more storyline I do want to talk about that fits this kind of like thing of like how much of this is real. So because you played the games, you might know that the most enduring wrestling character of the past maybe 30 years has been an undead wizard.
Undertaker?
Yes.
Yes. Wait, he's a wizard?
He does magic.
Oh, I didn't know he did magic. I thought he just pretended he was dead.
No, he'll like throw his hands up and lightning will strike the ring. Or
what?
Like he'll make people hallucinate. They'll see bloody versions of themselves in the mirror. They'll open a coffin and they'll see themselves in the coffin.
How has this not made it into any of the video games?
In some of the stories he has, and he also can teleport. That's and they achieve the teleportation by having the lights go down. You hear like a funeral gong, and he then appears in the ring. People have noticed how they do it, and I feel bad for Mark Calloway, who's the person who portrays Undertaker, because he has to sit under the ring the whole show until it's time.
Oh God, that sucks. I mean, I guess for his craft, but like, geez. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, so there's the storyline that I'm thinking that they did with him where it was like, how much of this is real, is that one day Vince came out to the ring and said, Undertaker, he says Mark Calloway, who you know as Undertaker, has like lost himself in his character and now genuinely believes he's the Undertaker.
What?
This was the storyline for like half a year.
You can't do that though. Like, the levels of like meta that invokes of like, we've all been pretending this is real, and as you know it's not, but this guy pretended too hard, and now he thinks the thing that we treat as real even though it's fake is actually a real non-fake thing. Like, you can't, That... Yeah, no, I can't think of any medium where you can tell that story on, I guess, fiction where the characters know they're fictional characters, and I don't even, I, I guess a fictional actor who gets stuck in his fictional in-universe role, and we know that he's actually a different, even then, that, what?
So, Undertaker starts recruiting a cult.
Of course, yeah. Like you do. Thank you for this extremely normal sentence.
Where he basically recruits people into it by either A, like, beating them into it, or B, they were already kind of like a supernatural character and they just got added into his cult. They called it the Ministry.
Oh god, okay.
So, like, every wrestler is trying to stop the Ministry, but it's just not working out. At one point, Vince's daughter gets kidnapped, and he's like, I'm going to sacrifice Stephanie McMahon to the higher power that I serve.
Okay.
So Vince gets Stone Cold to fight, and Stone Cold gets crucified. Let me get the picture of this.
Oh, dear God. Okay, I think I do need to see the picture of this, actually.
They raise him into the air. And he's cursing the whole time.
They just full on... Oh, how?
They crucified him.
I don't... Okay. All right. Sure.
So I also just want to bring up that, like, the list of the people in the Undertaker's team, the Ministry.
Oh, absolutely.
We'll do a full, like, episode on vampires in WWE.
Okay.
But there was a team of vampires called the Brood.
Oh.
Where, like, the main guy was named Gangrel. He sipped blood from a chalice.
Okay.
This is not the first vampire WWE did either.
Oh my god.
The most interesting part of Gangrel being in this group is that he was not one of the original members. He joined later. He was existing independently as a vampire.
He just... Okay. Oh... What? I mean, the entire point of this podcast is that I have so many questions, but, like, still, I have so many questions.
Feel free, I'd be happy to answer that.
I feel like I just want to start with why italicized, but, like, that's not specific enough. How many people were in the Brood before Gangrel joined it?
So there were 3 in the Brood.
Right.
One of them is Edge. Edge is a vampire.
Wait. Did he get turned into a vampire before or after the thing with Matt?
So he started his career as not being a vampire.
Okay.
He briefly became a vampire.
Okay.
And then he and the other member of the Brood, Christian, became unvampired.
I was going to say, I noticed that you said that you made it clear he was temporarily a vampire. So this was like Jubilee from X-Men, where you just had to be a vampire for a while and then you move on with your life.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit of vampire.
Thanks, I hate it. You know, I think that the one thing about the Brood and about Undertaker, I really think it illustrates your point of wrestling having a lot in common with specific types of anime storytelling. Because this is how I feel when my girlfriend tries to explain One Piece to me, is I'm just like, okay, sure, all of these things are happening. These are all these characters. I guess this might as well be how the world works. Sure.
It's it's such a ridiculous storyline, especially because it concluded in not a good way.
Oh God, like, how do you not stick this landing?
So, because this whole time Undertaker is saying like, "Oh, I serve a higher power," everyone's wondering like who the higher power is. People are like, is it a wrestler from another company? Is it an older wrestler? Who's coming back? So they one day he's gonna be like, the higher power is gonna be revealed. There's like this robed guy in the ring.
Oh no.
And like at this point, most of the McMahon family has also joined the cult. God. They've been brainwashed into the cult as well. Vince is still like on Austin's side fighting against it. So they pull down the hood of the cult and it's Vince.
Wait. Was he a double agent? Is that what that is?
This whole thing was to fuck with Stone Cold.
This whole thing was just that is insanity.
And he when they pull back the hood, he goes, "It's me, Austin!"
That's where that clip comes from?
Yeah.
That's what that... Oh my God, that's so much better with context.
And Jim Ross's reaction, son of a bitch, is everyone's reaction to that reveal. Because it made no fucking sense.
That is incredible.
It goes on beyond it where he's like, you all bought it. Austin bought it. Even my immediate family bought it.
You can't do that. That can't be, you can't make fun of your audience for falling for the thing you told them was true. That's not how that works. It's like when, oh God, I can't think of a good example. It's like when a writer claims that there's a plot twist in the story, but they just lied to you, and then it turns out they lied to you later in order to make the plot thing happen. Just...
It's very funny to me.
That is wonderful.
And at that point, Undertaker's cult didn't dissolve. It just it changed from being the Ministry of Darkness to the corporate ministry.
Are you kidding me?
Where it was just like, yeah, we're big business, but, you know.
Also, we're vampires.
A cult.
Yeah. Yes. Are they still, is that still, surely by now that's not a thing, right? Like, are they still, is that still the conceit of...
They did stop that storyline when Undertaker decided to start being a biker.
Oh, okay. I mean, wizard to biker feels like a lateral move to me, so that makes sense.
He would, like, ride his motorcycle down to the ring and chase people around with it.
God.
Since we have 2 minutes left, there's another important piece of this storyline that I've been neglecting.
By all means.
Because he kept coming up in it. He's not like a main character in it. But because we're already on the subject of the Undertaker being a wizard, and it's probably best for us to talk about the other member of his family that's in WWE, Kane, who is his burn victim brother.
Oh, they are brothers. Okay, I actually knew that. I don't know how I knew that, but I did. Okay. So the storyline of how he got burned changes very frequently. Okay.
So they introduced him with Undertaker had a manager whose name was Paul Bearer. I hate that his name is just a pun.
No, it's perfect. I hate it so much.
I want to show you what he looks like.
Oh, thank you so much. The pictures are really making this for me. Thank you.
When he's not in WWE, since WWE owns the name Paul Bearer somehow, his name is Percy Pringle.
Are you kidding? That's who that is?
Yep.
What? Okay.
So, Undertaker left him behind at some point. He, like, started his career with Undertaker, and the whole thing is, like, there was a thing with, like, an urn. It's confusing. That will be an episode.
Okay.
But he was, like, in the lead up to this the fucking corporate ministry and all that, they introduced Kane, which was his brother, and like Undertaker said, like in the ring, like, I had a brother, but he like died in the fire with the rest of my family, which is a thing that was uttered in TV with no emotional depth.
Of course.
But then Paul Bearer's like, no, he's alive, and he's mad at you, Undertaker.
What? Why is he mad at Undertaker?
So they flipped back and forth on who started the fire a lot.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes it was Kane that started the fire. Sometimes it was Undertaker who started the fire. Kane is also a little bit of a wizard himself.
Oh, okay. Just like on the side.
But only sometimes. Because he can summon fire, but only sometimes.
Okay. All right.
So he was a piece of the story. This is how they made him a good guy temporarily.
Kane or Undertaker?
Kane.
Okay.
Because Undertaker was like, everyone likes the Undertaker, even though he's a corpse.
Mm-hmm.
But they were like, this is how we're going to make Kane a good guy for a little bit. Is that he's trying to stop his cult leader brother.
I mean, yeah, that checks out, I guess.
There's one other member of the ministry. I want to let you know how his career progressed.
Okay.
So, this man's name is Viscera.
Oh.
He is gigantic. He was like 400 pounds. He's like more than 6 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
And he was always acted as kind of like the security for any group he was in. I want you to guess how his career advanced. What gimmick he did next.
Well, assuming that he became part of the corporate ministry at some point, I'm gonna guess he just went legit and started working a desk job. He just came to work in a suit one day and no one questioned it.
No, he after he left the corporate ministry where he maintained the same gimmick, he became the world's largest love machine. Where he would come out in like lounge suits to like the ring.
And was that his gimmick before too?
It was, he just randomly became this afterwards.
That's a career pivot. That's what you do. Okay. I mean, good for him. That's a lot of confidence to have in yourself.
And then after that, he randomly became evil again.
Okay, yeah, like you do.
And he was changed his name to Big Daddy V, whose entire character is that he was big.
So this man is literally that Tumblr post that reads, "I'm no longer evil, I want to be loved," and then evil again.
Yes.
Okay. I feel like I'm catching on, at least a little.
Yeah, it's... Wrestling is a trip. And I think we're nearing the end of the podcast. Join us next time when I talk about when a 600-pound former sumo wrestler hatched from an egg and a woman gave birth to a human hand.
That sounds like a pretty normal day of wrestling to me. Well, thank you for inflicting this knowledge on my brain. I don't think it's ever going to escape.
You're stuck here with me now.
Yeah, this ring has no doors. I can't get out. That's how that works. Don't worry about it. The emotional cage match that is this podcast.
Oh, by the way, just to inflict it on you one further, here's when Viscera was the world's largest love machine.
Thank you. I don't think this would have been complete if I didn't get to see this. I was expecting like red. I was expecting like a red velvet robe, like kind of the classic, like really cliche look. This is good though. This is nice. It's much more tasteful than I was expecting it to be, I'll say.
His submission move was dry humping his opponent.
Oh man. He had me and then he lost me.
Oh god. He's just someone who's stuck in my head. mostly because in one of the wrestling video games, I believe SmackDown vs. Raw 2007, there's a storyline with someone has a magic wand.
Oh no.
You know.
Okay. Yeah, like you do.
And at some point, she gets upset that your character refers to her as a witch and says that she wants to have a match with you tonight. And then whoever you're playing as, I was playing as John Cena, says the words, "I don't do any bikini contests." And then she waves her wand and turns your player into a girl.
Huh.
And Viscera frequently flirts with the girl version of your character.
Huh. I mean, that actually is the most anime thing you've brought up so far. Oh, well, I learned too much, I would say, today.
Psychic damage has been done.
It sure has. Thank you for that.
You're stuck here.
Well, in that case, I guess I will see you next time.